posted on that. Meanwhile, is this a case of tit for tat? We don't know. This much we do. Russia is claiming cyber attacks against it have increased, maybe in response to the reports here that they played a big role in hacking our latest presidential election. Tom Kellermann is a strategic cyber ventures CEO, joining us on this. What do you make of this? Was this a case of our upping the ante, responding to them, or what?
I find it ironic that the Russian wolf is crying wolf, but yeah, I do believe that this is proportionate active response to the campaigns that have been leveraged against the U.S. for the last 5 years. We have to remember it wasn't just the DNC, but wide swaths of the financial sector and energy sector that were colonized by Russian organized hacking, and that mass swaths of intellectual property and financial data was stolen as well.
All right, what did we hack with the Russians, if this is true? Because I don't know what our statements have been on this, but assuming this is true, that we certainly had the capability to do it, what were we hitting or trying to hit?
I'm not sure if this can be verified, but if it was to be verified, I'm sure they're targeting President Putin and his oligarchs and his inner circles, financial assets and any sort of information that might be used to embarrass him in the public domain there, as well as ensuring that they're well aware that as much as they have backdoors in our critical networks, that we ourselves can place backdoors in theirs. I think it's more signaling than anything else that we are willing to go to the mattresses with them should they decide to take the gloves off.
All right. Do you think this would be a policy pursued by the president-elect, that he's said we want to start from scratch and start afresh and new with Vladimir Putin? But if this is continuing, if we're still doing this, would a Donald Trump put a stop to it and just try to give talking a chance, or what?
I mean, dialogue is always very important, but we need to recognize and appreciate that Mr. Putin, as a former head of the KGB, as a chess master, is intent upon reclaiming the Baltics in Europe, is intent upon regaining the historical posterity that the Soviet Union used to have. And in doing that, Mr. President-elect Trump would be getting in his way inevitably. So I think it's important that he recognize and appreciate the duality of his adversary in this context.
You know, every president, Republican or Democrat, has tried to forge better ties with his counterpart in the old Soviet Union, now Russia. It was George Bush who famously said, "I looked into his eyes," and then there was a hope for an accord or reach or broaching agreements with Barack Obama when he came in. None of it materialized, or something went very wrong very fast. What about Donald Trump and how he gets along with Vladimir Putin and Russia in general?
Well, obviously, that is one of his priorities, is to improve these Cold War type relations. But in doing so, I think we should be far more concerned with his rhetoric towards China, in that the inevitable trade war between the U.S. and China will result in a cyber conflict prior to the escalation of economics coming from the East. And so as we move forward, as we accept him as our president, as we embrace his ideology and his stratagems, he needs to appreciate that he is the leader of the U.S., and he will be targeted by these traditional adversaries as well.
You know, Tom, while I have you, John Lewis, the civil rights titan and congressman, in talking about not going to the Trump inauguration on Friday, and now he's got 26 others, like-minded congressmen, also opting out of the event. It started with him saying that Donald Trump wasn't a legitimate president and that the Russian hacking did affect the outcome. But I know nothing in the intelligence that I've seen, not that the Russians didn't have a role, but that they could have affected the outcome, reversed it, in other words. Have you?
No, and in fact, when I was a CSO of Trend Micro, we briefed the intelligence community on the fact that 2,300 most powerful politicians in D.C. and their spouses were successfully hacked by Russian campaign. So it wasn't just the DNC that was successfully hacked. I do see President Trump as a legitimate president. That being said, what we need to appreciate is wide swaths of the most powerful people in Washington's computer systems have been colonized by Russian hackers, and they have yet to actually triage those systems and get them out.
All right, Tom Kellermann, thank you very much. Strategic Cyber Ventures CEO in Washington, D.C. Of course.